Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Arnie Luks here at the Crossroads, and I'd like to welcome our guest panelist from Adelaide, South Australia, Beata Luks. Welcome, Beata.
Good morning.
No worries. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so I'm just going to bring up a website, and we'll we'll work our way through um, the work of Frances Hutchinson, and in particular, this Frances is at the Douglas Social Credit website. You'll find her there, and she's written quite a few books or been party to quite a few books, and this is it here. There's a list of those books that she's been party to or she's promoting. And finally, in the social artist for this just past December, Frances is talking about women and social credit economics. And it's of this subject that I wish to draw our attention to and allow Beata to have the floor. Beata.
Mm. Where do we start? Um, Francis is famous for saying half of the world's population are women, and the role they play in the family and in the economy as such is not something to be disregarded. But the needs of women have to be taken into consideration in this machine age where everyone just leaves the home and goes to work. And there is no time for raising family, there is no time for leisure. There's absolutely incredible overcrowding of big cities where people are not very healthy, they not very happy. Something is lacking. This globalization has done no good to either of us. So this is the main concern.
Hmm. It's a very good opening comment, Beata, and that is that since industrialization and really the machine age, and in particular the 1900s, the 20th century, with automation, with at least industrialization and the degree of manufacture that has absolutely gone right across the world. And here we are, even though we're producing so much, the woman. The woman from the woman from the home or the home keeper or the person who actually is responsible for rearing the children has been drawn into the workforce. We've got all of this vast manufacturing capacity, and of course, in the last 50 years, we see automation, we see advanced control, robotics, and computer control. It's just absolutely colossal the amount of production that's going on, and yet only in the last 100 years, really since the First World War, has the woman been drawn out of the home into the workforce, and we cannot afford society cannot afford to actually have our children neglected like this, because it has got significant ramifications to our, if you like, our culture. Beata.
Yes. So women are taking up jobs which actually should go to young people that have just left school, especially the male. It would do him no harm to find out what work means.
Mm,
Anyway, work needs to be defined further. It's not just factory or office work. There needs to be a reorientation in a policy to encourage people to work from home, from their farm, from their little allotment, whatever they have, that they can actually find employment and sustenance, pardon me, sustenance for themselves and their families.
mm. That's it's a very profound insight that you're looking at, Beata, and that is that not only has if you like, the disconnect occurred between
Mm.
people, in particular families, and the soil, and their own little plot. There's been a serious disconnect, and of course the people are herded into these high rise, into these major
mm,
cities and high rise, and they're actually losing their relationship with the natural world. I mean, we have a
mm,
backdrop, this image of a fertile Garden of Eden behind us, and the fact is that in a high rise, a concrete jungle, these things are just sadly lacking. And of course, if children are brought up in this environment, then they have a serious disconnect from the natural world. And how are they supposed to orientate when it's like that? It really is it's a false sense of what's real out there. Beata.
mm.
Mm,
Yes. Well, children are supposed to watch and observe the changing seasons, the the fruit that grows at the
hmm
certain stage in the year. Um, I've got it very often when I go to supermarket because I can't grow celeriac for some reason. So I go and buy celeriac, and the checkout girl doesn't know what it is.
mm, mm,
Mm,
Yeah,
probably
that's
doesn't grow in Australia.
well, it doesn't readily grow or isn't on the big list for the farmers. But I know that yesterday I was actually attending to some bees, and it's fascinating looking at the change in climate because this past season has seen an offset of at least 10 weeks between the honey production and what it was the previous year. So that's quite
Mm,
a significant change, but you have to work with it and roll with the punches. So some seasons are plentiful and other seasons are just average or a little bit below average. This season has been good for other fruit, not just honey, but for fruit. And it's also been good for animals because, as you're
mhm,
aware, we've got some new lambs in the paddock, and what a delightful blessing that is to actually see them in their tender age and so close to their mother, and of course suckling. And you've got to keep a close eye because there's predators and things out there that would take advantage of the newborn. So it's been a busy time for us, but it's been a lovely
mm.
time because we've been able to share with the neighbours' children and extended family those children to show them and to share with them the new life. So it really is a beautiful thing, but it's quite deliberate that we actually do these things so that they're on display for our children and extended families to see. Beata.
Yes, but we also do a lot of work in preserving fruit and
Mm,
such. So this household is sort of reminiscent of bygone era, I suppose. It's not very globalized, and we're happy with that
mhm,
because actually the needs that we have in economic and and spiritual sphere are really provided for, and this is the main things that you need to have provided.
mm,
This is the sustenance.
mhm,
The other things that political rights, what else, are provided by governments most likely.
mm,
So the household needs their own little governing in a sense.
mm, mm. One thing I do note in our home, in our family, is how little, um, if you like, government we need because because the two of us are generally working pretty closely together, and so we're able to actually just process things, whether it is harvesting fruit or it's working in the garden or looking after the creatures that we have. And so it's to me it's all part of the husbandry that's there. But I will note in the backdrop that Beata has that wall of books that's there. And the fact is that the concern we had in the last few weeks was the actual false reality that you get from TV. And yet, if you can get a book out, a good book, and you're able to place thoughts into your imagination and then relate it to the world that's outside the door, it becomes quite healthy to me and quite vital. Whereas with TV, it's you're not actually able, especially in the high-rise sort of environment. that is the world today, you're not actually able to relate it to the real world. It becomes something that you think this is what's going on because you've seen it on TV, it must be true. But in actual fact, when you get outside and you have a look, it's not necessarily so at all. Beata.
Yes. Speaking of husbandry, it's probably worth mentioning that corporations have taken over the agribusiness. Agribusiness. It used to be agriculture, something connected to the culture. So we lost culture in a sense.
Hmm,
It's all either mechanized or sprayed over with Monsanto products or fertilized with Monsanto products. You see, it's one corporations one corporation ruling the business
hmm, hmm,
all over the world.
hmm,
And then, of course, the effect of that on health
hmm,
has been noted here before, and we are very concerned. We're
hmm,
very concerned.
hmm. That's right. And I will note for the audience's sake, our garden is spray free, and even our curbside is spray free, and we encourage council because the council has a spraying program, certainly not to spray on our curb, but we also challenge the council about spraying, that it's the reports coming out are that it's certainly not healthy and it's certainly not sustainable. Um, Putting this sort of heavy doses of things onto the soil, and then of course it goes into the food chain, and so you're ingesting it, and
Mm.
we are concerned about it, and so what we do is we respond by doing as much as we can and sourcing freshly grown and certainly spray free as a first choice. So these are the things that we're doing to actually, if you like, push back the tide of modernism, and also for us to anchor our thinking into the natural world. And I'd encourage our viewers to do exactly the same thing as best as they can, even if they've got a small footprint, a small home or a unit. You can still bring in pots, and you can still have a lush little natural paradise on your balcony or somewhere like that. And vertical gardens are wonderful things, and it'll help you at least relate to the natural world on a day by day basis. Beata.
Very much has been written about the health, the effects on health of the food that we eat. But there is also the electronics that
Hmm.
people use,
Hmm.
um, and most of all, and most importantly, the city with the town with the high rise and such dense population. It's the effects of it all
Hmm.
are multiplied in
Hmm.
that place. It's well, no wonder that people are very stressed and running around, a little depressed. Mm.
Hmm. I think that's a very good point, Beata. In this home, we've made it our business to not have Wi-Fi unless it's absolutely necessary. And I've got to confess that this recording is actually, we're using Wi-Fi, but only for the sake of the recording and stability. Otherwise, we'd be using cable. And in our normal runnings, that's exactly what we do. We use it cable, and we also resist smart meters because of what they call dirty electricity. These are things that I'd encourage our audience to actually find out for themselves, because there's certainly some very good websites out there. Natural News is one of them. Macola. You know some other websites as well, Beata.
Green Med Info
Green Med Info.
is a really interesting website.
Hmm.
But we sort of veered away from the subject of women,
Hmm.
and I would like to say that women have got such an integral role to play, and it all depends on the individual
Hmm.
to make decisions that could serve as an example for others,
mm,
could influence the smaller group than larger group. Um, it's not just allowing the financial system to drive this wage slavery that everyone is growing into basically through the education and influence of the home. It's going to be more and more difficult for everyone to find the magic fantastically paid job in the future. It's not going to be easy. So don't hang your hopes on something that is so very elusive.
mm,
Find your way. It's
mm.
your imagination and it's a great potential to do it.
That's beautifully said, Beata, because it is your imagination. It's actually being able to place your position in the natural world and work your way through as to those things that actually do work. And you imagine them. If you only have four walls and you don't get outside, then your imagination can actually play tricks on you. Whereas if you're outside and you see the outworking of your imagination, you actually anchor your thinking. You anchor your thinking with that which actually works. And of course, the home is fundamental because we're looking at the theory, if you like, the social engineering that's going on in society, in schools, in places of education, certainly politically, and in the mainstream media. And this is significantly influencing people's imagination. This is the power that television especially has
Mm.
over your thinking because it places thoughts there. And if you see it on TV, of course, you take it as bona fide. This is how it works. When in actual fact, if you put it to the test, not necessarily so at all. And I think that's most important. This is where if you like, the homekeeper, the mother, the woman, the role in society is just so foundational. It's so fundamental. And if it's neglected for the pursuit of some utopian promises of whatever, um, you're missing out. The family's missing out. The society is missing out. There's just this huge shortfall. And of course, culture, if you like, civilizational culture suffers badly. Beata.
Yes, the change coming over is too fast for anyone to cope. Children are not anchored in. They don't know what's happening, and you call it environmentalism and genderism and whatever else is coming on, and it doesn't have any connection with the real world.
Mm,
So it's nothing that will give you any profit in the future.
mm, mm. That's a very good observation, Beata. And I'm just looking at the time, and I'm thinking that it's pretty close to due time. So I'll just call for closing comments, Beata.
Oh, I thought it was a closing comment. Thank you, Annie.
No worries, it could be just that. This is Arnie Luks and Beata Luks at the Crossroads. Thanks very much for joining us. Cheers.
Thank you.